Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan and today I'm going to be counting down the top 20 best prospects right now in 2022. Now, making this list was extremely difficult, but honestly with both the 2020 and the 2021 drafts, there is some amazing high quality top end talent prospect wise in the NHL right now. But who do I see as the best prospects in the NHL and which prospects make today's top 20. Watch till the end for the complete prospect rankings and make sure you hit that subscribe button if you are new. 50% of the people that are watching are not subscribed, so if you like hockey and if you like prospect content, this channel is the place to be. Now, before we get into the actual top 20, there were almost like 8 different players that just missed the top 20, but I think would usually be top 20 prospects in any other year. But honestly, the 2020 and 2021 drafts, again, have been so good high-end-wise that there is some players that just missed. You got Caiden Guhle of the Montreal Canadiens, their top prospect. Brendan Othmann, also another top prospect for the New York Rangers, having a great year in the OHL, though I do still see there being some issues once he transitions to the pro game, which is why he's just outside the top 20. You also got Yaroslav, Askarov, who's playing great in Russia. You have Dylan Holloway, who's also getting back to things after his pretty big injury. You got Matthew Nice, who rebounded incredibly well and had a great year with Minnesota. You also got Lucas Reichel, who's a point per game in the AHL. Owen Zellweger, who's putting up monstrous numbers in the WHL for a D-man. JJ Peterka, who alongside Jack Quinn has been fantastic. And Bobby Brink, who is great in the NCAA and is now with Philadelphia. So many great prospects that just did not make the cut. But starting us off in the top 20, and for the top 20 best NHL prospects, we're going to go on to the 20th best prospect here, and we're going to start out with a D-man on this list with Leafs defender Topi Niemela. Now, Topi Niemela has been a pretty big favorite of mine pretty much immediately after he was drafted 64th overall in 2020. He was immediately looking like a steal. I thought he definitely should have been drafted higher, and for the Leafs, it's looking that way. At age 20, at a 5'11" height, he's been great over in Finland over the past couple of years. This year in the Liga, getting 32 points, 10 goals, 22 assists for 4 in 48 games. He's a fast, high-paced, high-skilled defender, and I think he's going to be a guy on a top 4 on a power play and a consistent two-way force for Toronto. Then going on to number 19, we're going to go to one of my favorite prospects on the list, and for some people, he might be pretty high, but considering where I had him in the rankings and how good he's done this year, I think it does make sense. At number 19, I have Stars prospect Logan Stankoven. Now, I ranked him 16th overall in the last draft rankings of 2021, and he ended up going way later than that, 47th overall in the second round to the Stars, but he's been absolutely elite in the WHL this year in 57 games, getting 44 goals, 58 assists for 102 points. Even though he is on the smaller side of things, his intensity, his consistency, his work ethic is all so extremely high, and I would not be surprised if he's a consistent and great top sixer for the Stars one day. Now going on to number 18, though, we're going to go to a prospect that I had also in my top 25 of last year's draft rankings that I thought went way too late in the actual draft. At number 18, I have the 52nd overall pick by the Islanders in Aatu Räty. Now, he was a player that I knew was snake-bitten last year, and although he wasn't playing great, I still thought he was driving results pretty well and just not getting the points to show for it. And I thought he should have gone in the top 25 with his overall great potential, and he went in the second round, and so far he's looked fantastic in the Liga this year, where in 41 games he has 13 goals, 27 assists for 40 points, a complete turnaround from last year, and I knew that rebound was going to come. He's going to be a consistent and excellent force for the Islanders and will fit exceedingly well into Barry Trotz's system, especially with the players that Barry Trotz likes. I think Räty is definitely going to be one of those guys. Now going on to number 17, we're going to go to another Stars prospect on this list. Trust me, I'm not biased. I'm trying my best. But at number 17, I have a player that I was pretty wrong about at last year's draft in Wyatt Johnston. Now, the Stars got up and selected him 23rd overall in 2021. He was a guy I didn't have nearly as high because of the stoppage of the OHL, and we really didn't know what to think of him, but he burst onto the scene in the OHL, and at age 18, in 66 games, he has 45 goals, 78 assists for 123 points, being maybe the most offensively dominant player in the entire CHL this year as an 18-year-old, which is crazy to think about, but his shot, his playmaking, his patience, has all been at such an elite level. Now going on to number 16 though, and the 16th best prospect in the NHL, we're going to go back to another Canadian team's prospect and go on to Matt Coronato, who was drafted 13th overall in the 2021 draft, and I thought that was pretty much in line of where I had him at. He, though, was going from the USHL to the NCAA, and sometimes there might be some issues there, but playing with Harvard, there were no production issues whatsoever. In 34 games, he got 18 goals, 18 assists for 36 points. I love Coronato's pace of play. I think he's going to be an absolutely amazing, energizing forward for the future for the Calgary Flames. I could see him easily on a top 6 and a consistent scoring and goal scoring threat too. Definitely deserve to be in the top 16 and looking very solid for Calgary. Now going on to number 15, we're going to go on to another player that was pretty high for my rankings in 2021 and has played well this season in Dylan Guenther. Now, he was the 9th overall pick by the Coyotes, and I'm not as high on him as they are, but at age 19, he's been once again wonderful in the WHL. In 57 games, he's gotten 45 goals, 45 assists for 90 points. Really just a consistent overall offensive product. He's not a complete goal scorer, he's not a complete playmaker, but he does everything very well while also driving play exceedingly solidly and consistently too. Although there also could be some issues translating to the NHL once you get some bigger bodies against you. At the same time, he's done well with some pretty good physicality around him, and I think he'll do fantastically on that top 6 in Arizona. Now going on to number 14 and the 14th best prospect of the NHL draft. This is a guy that's really turned around some of the areas of his game since he was drafted in 2020, 8th overall, and has played amazingly in the AHL this year in Jack Quinn. Now I'm still not as high on him as some other people. I know some people might have him in their top 10, but at the same time, Quinn has done some marvelous things in the AHL as a 20-year-old this year, where in 38 games with Rochester, has 25 goals, 31 assists for 56 points, absolutely lighting it up pretty much every single night, and that's about as good a production you could ever expect to see from a 20-year-old. I still have some of the same concerns I have with Quinn that I had in 2020, mostly that he pretty much needs a great centerman and a great playmaker alongside him to truly maximize his potential, but at the same time, for Buffalo, you got guys like Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins who are going to be there and going to be feeding Jack Quinn pretty often. So I don't really have many worries for Quinn, especially offensively. I think he's going to fit in pretty amazingly. Now moving on to number 13 and the 13th best prospect right now in the NHL. Let's go on to a defenseman here, and let's move on to the 8th overall pick by the LA Kings in the 2021 draft in Brandt Clarke. Now I am a little bit higher on Brandt Clarke than some other people, and although I perfectly admit that there likely will be some growing pains going into the NHL, kind of like we've seen with Jamie Drysdale, but at the same time with Brandt Clarke, the skating, the offense, and the constant pressure that he brings, I think will fit pretty well into LA's system. In the OHL this year, in 55 games, he has 11 goals, 48 assists for 49 points, leading the entire Barrie Colts in points as well. He's a great play driver though, knows when to go up the ice and knows when to carry pucks fantastically. He's a guy that I just love watching. He's one of the more entertaining defenseman prospects right now in the NHL too, and I think he'll go pretty smoothly once he fully transitions with LA. They got a ton of great playmakers, a ton of great forward prospects, but Brandt Clarke is definitely their best D1. Now going on to number 12, we're going to go to one of the prospects that I thankfully was a little bit right about, especially this year, in Jesper Wallstedt. Now, he's the player that I loved in the 2021 draft. I had him in my top 15. I thought he was the best goaltender of that draft, and once Sebastian Cossa went ahead of him, there were some pretty big questions on who would actually be better going into the future, but personally, I still definitely go with Wallstedt. At age 19, he's been fantastic and a 20th overall pick by the Wild in 2021. He has been great in the SHL this year, where in 22 games, he's gotten a 1.98 goals against average and a .918 save percentage. He has a higher save percentage in the SHL than Cossa has in the WHL, and I think that's really just a big, it's not a surprising thing for me, but it's a surprising thing for probably some other people, but he's a guy that's been super consistent, super mature, and I think will definitely be a great starting goaltender for the Wild in the future. Now going on to number 11, just outside the top 10, but at number 11, he's still one of the best prospects in the NHL. We're going to go to maybe the most fun player on this entire list in Kent Johnson, who was a 5th overall pick by the Blue Jackets in 2021, and in terms of his potential, there's just so much beaming from his offensive skill set. He's in my opinion, the most fun and the most highlight reel player out of this list. And although there is a lot of skill and a lot to work with there, I think there will be some defensive issues, especially in terms of effort at the NHL level. But if he is sheltered, if he is in the power play, and if he's on that top 6, I don't think you'll have many issues. With Michigan in the NCAA this year in 32 games, had 8 goals, 29 assists for 37 points. He's going to bring the offense, and that's what's going to be his brand for Columbus. Now going on to number 10, and now going inside the top 10 best NHL prospects. Let's go on to the 10th spot, and let's move on to Mason McTavish. I know he went 3rd overall. I'm still not that high on him, but it has been a lot of progress since his draft year, and he's another guy kind of like Wyatt Johnston who didn't play that much in his draft year, but also has done great since then. At age 19 in the OHL this year, he's been fantastic. In 22 games, he's gotten 14 goals, 24 assists for 38 points. He has the game that, in my opinion, will translate very well to the NHL, especially to start out. He's consistent defensively, uses his physical size just so amazingly, and on a daily basis too. He doesn't really take many shifts off. He's a guy that loves to make the game extremely difficult for all other opponents, and his shot is probably among the best in this entire list. He's going to be a great NHL player, but I do think it's just a matter of if he'll be a great first liner or just a good top 6er. But now let's move on to number 9 and go on to the first of 2 Devils prospects in this top 10 in Alexander Holtz, who, as a right winger, drafted 7th overall in the 2020 draft, has progressed about as consistently as you would have hoped to since his draft year. In 47 AHL games this year, he's been stellar, getting 24 goals, 23 assists for 47 points, being a point per game. And honestly, I think the biggest thing that's translated well with Alexander Holtz has been the playmaking side of his game. We knew that he was an amazing goal scorer, but the passing and the threading of the needle, let's say, has definitely improved since his draft year, and that's a big sign towards his offensive potential, where he can do both and do them well. At number 9, though, I think he definitely deserves to be in the top 10 and will be a wonderful power play and offensive prospect for the Devils to work with. Now going on to number 8, we're going to go to another Swedish player here, this time in the form of Simon Edvinsson, who I was decently high on. I think I had him 7th overall in my draft rankings in 2021. He was a guy that I saw as a pretty big boomer bust player with the lack of all that effort in this draft year, with the lack of great offensive play. There was some questions, but he's really resolved all of those since then, and in the SHL this year, he has been fantastic. Where at a 6'5" frame, he's been using it well in 44 SHL games, getting 2 goals, 17 assists for 19 points. In my opinion, Edvinsson will likely be a top pair or even top 3 defenseman for the Red Wings in the future, using his size, using his amazing defensive IQ, and really bringing a lot more offense than I think most people expected, even in his draft year. But let's go on to another D-man, shall we? And let's go on to that second Devils prospect inside the top 10. And now going on to Luke Hughes, one of my favorite prospects of the 2021 draft, and translated beautifully into the NCAA this year. At age 19 and a 6'2" frame, he was drafted 4th overall by New Jersey in 2021. And this season with Michigan in 41 games as a freshman D-man, had 17 goals, 22 assists for 39 points. In my opinion, he's going to be beautifully fit into that New Jersey Devil system, although there is still some defensive issues, and I don't think they'll exactly be fixed in New Jersey. The skating and the passing and the raw power play quarterback talent is just so fun to watch, and I think alongside guys like Jack Hughes and Alexander Holtz and Nico Hischier and Jesper, he's going to be so perfect with those offensive weapons. Now moving on to number 6 and the 6th best prospect in the NHL. I might have this guy a little bit high compared to where you might have him, but I still think there's so much potential in Marco Rossi. The 9th overall pick by the Wild in the 2020 draft has had an interesting development since then, obviously having that COVID scare a year and a half ago. He's progressed pretty well since then, and in the Iowa Wild's farm team, or the Wild's farm team, the Iowa Wild, in 57 games in the AHL, he's gotten 17 goals, 33 assists for 50 points, leading his team in scoring, and considering what he had to go through, I think it's pretty miraculous he's been this good. At the same time, in my opinion, you might see a guy like Jack Quinn and see him as better because of the production, but in my opinion, with Marco Rossi's position being a center, with his defensive capabilities, with his pace of play, with his great skating, there's a lot more than meets the eye to the production, in my opinion, and I feel like Marco Rossi can be a top 6 centerman, while Jack Quinn will be a top 6 winger. To me, centermen are just more valuable, and Marco Rossi just has so much potential where I could even see him becoming a first-line player if the patience pays off. Now, speaking of future top-line players, let's go on to the last Swedish player of this list at the 5th overall spot, and let's go on to one of my favorites in William Eklund, who was drafted pretty late, in my opinion, in the first round, 7th overall by the San Jose Sharks. I think should have been a top 5 pick. He ended up starting the season with the San Jose Sharks, and in 9 games got 4 assists for 4 points, looked consistent and looked like an NHL player, then got sent down to the SHL and had a pretty rough start, but overall, he, in 29 games, has 1 goal, 13 assists for 14 points. Kind of got snake bitten a little bit, especially at the start of the year, but I don't really have too many worries with Eklund. His pace of play is fantastic, so speedy, so quick with his decision making. It's just so fun to watch. His passing is sublime though, and I think the goal scoring can also come in the NHL too. I think he's going to be a great overall and two-way offensive force for the Sharks in the future, and I hope to see him being a mainstay with that team for a long time. Now going on to number 4, we're going to go to another just absolutely ridiculous offensive player in Cole Perfetti of the Winnipeg Jets. Now, he's an interesting one at age 20. He's been playing in the NHL and the AHL this year. He's played 18 NHL games, getting 7 points, and 17 AHL games, getting 15 points. Also with the Canadian World Junior team in 2 games, got 6 points as well. To me, when it comes to Cole Perfetti, there's just a lot to like. If he is a centerman, that's fantastic, but I think he can play either center or wing. He's a guy that loves to have great IQ to his game. His decision-making is probably the best of this entire list. He's a guy, though, that loves to push, play offensively, and be a great play driver. And in my opinion, there's going to be so many great offensive plays behind Cole Perfetti's dominance. He's going to be fantastic for the Jets, and they already prioritize offense. Perfetti will fit right at home. But now let's move on to a player at number 3 that I am willing to say I was decently wrong about. Probably should have had a lot higher in my 2020 rankings, in Jake Sanderson of the Ottawa Senators. Now, he recently signed with the Sens, and hopefully will have a decent stint with them at the end of this year to hopefully get ready for next season. But he was a player that, with the University of North Dakota, has been excellent. This year in 23 games, has 8 goals, 18 assists for 26 points. Absolutely elite skater, great transitional player, has been a lot better defensively over the past couple of years and using his body well. He's a player that I could see being a jack of all trades for the Sens defensively, and I feel like would be a perfect partner alongside Thomas Chabot someday. He's going to be super valuable for the Sens though, and is looking like a solid pick back then. Now let's go on to number 2, and in my opinion, these top 2 spots have to go between Matty Beniers and Owen Power, and you can go back and forth. I, at the 2021 draft, picked Beniers over Owen Power, but at the same time, it was pretty much a tie for me, and it was mostly going back to Power not looking amazing up to that point in the NCAA, but since then, I think Power has looked slightly better than Beniers, and at number 2, I am gonna go with Matty Beniers at this spot. Now, that's not to say that I think Matty Beniers has done horribly or he doesn't deserve the first overall pick anymore for me, but at the same time, Matty Beniers, I think, has just been slightly a little bit less better. At the same time, at age 19, he was amazing in the NCAA this year, where in 37 games, he got 20 goals, 23 assists for 43 points. Also had an amazing assist in his first game with the Seattle Kraken. But with Matty Beniers, he's a guy that I've always loved. It's not just the offensive potential, but it's the skating, it's the IQ, it's the dominance in puck possession. He's going to be one of the best overall players, I think, in the NHL someday, with his fantastic face-off abilities and just everything about him. Being a center, being a great defensive player, being fantastic in terms of the smarts and decision-making, and also having the offensive potential. He's going to be a leader for this Kraken team, and I would not be surprised if he becomes one of their next captains. But now going on to the number 1 spot, and again, it's not that big of a difference between Beniers and number 1, but at the same time, for the best prospect in the NHL, I'm going to go with defensive D-man, 6'6" stud, Owen Power. Now, the thing is, when it comes to Owen Power, I know I had him 2nd overall in my 2021 rankings, but at the same time, he's definitely improved a lot since his draft year. This year in the NCAA in 3 games, had 3 goals, 29 assists for 32 points. He's a guy that I was waiting to see if he'd push play more, be a little bit more aggressive defensively, and just be a better consistent force on the back end. And thankfully, we saw some defensive issues kind of getting voided a little bit this year in Michigan. He was a lot more of a bigger body. You could tell he was using his physicality a lot more, which was great to see. He's a player, though, that in terms of the potential, the power that he has on his skates, just has so much raw potential to unlock in Buffalo. Obviously, we know the offense is fantastic, but if he uses that physicality and uses that big frame and great skating with the Sabres defensively, he is going to be a number 1 D-man and one of the better defensemen in the entire NHL. But that'll be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Please comment down below what you guys think about my top 20. What do you agree and disagree with? Which players should be on this list? Which players would you take out? Who do you think is the best prospect on this list as well? Let me know your thoughts down below. Make sure you share this video with your friends, get it to anybody you guys know, and click on this card for all my hockey prospects content right on playlist. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic day. Drink some water. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.